If you told me a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, that we'd be selling millions of jars of pasta sauce, I'd have been like, how is that even possible?
This is Troy, the 25-year-old who makes $1 million a month selling pasta sauce that is taking over TikTok. But let's back up. In 2022, Troy graduates college and gets the classic advice. Get a safe 9-to-5, climb the ladder, and one day, you'll be the boss. Problem is, Troy didn't want to be that kind of boss.
I was interning at a merchant bank at the time. I'd get calls at 1 a.m. from my MD that was 50 years old with a few kids calling me saying, we need to get this sim out by, 8 a.m. I don't really want to be 50 with kids having to do that.
Then COVID hits. School shut down and Troy sees an opportunity. No more waiting 20 years to run the show. He's gonna do it now. Troy and his best friend realize that every school is gonna need two things to come back in session: thermometers and hand sanitizers. So he did what most people would do: wire thousands of dollars to a Chinese supplier on Alibaba. A few weeks later, this thing showed up on his front porch. They called it the thermo sanitizer. And what they didn't realize though is that this thing was somehow gonna lead them to start a multi-million-dollar business.
High-tech sanitizer dispenser.
After dropshipping this product and pocketing a couple $100,000, Troy and Winston realized this business was not gonna last.
The business went straight up and we knew it was gonna come straight down.
But it wasn't over. They had one more bullet in the chamber.
Once we'd been bit by the entrepreneurial bug, we knew we had to do it. We had this insatiable will to not go back to the office and work behind a desk, right? Winston's dad had an office that he'd let us use in Pasadena. I would sleep on the couch. He would sleep on the floor. We would draft emails all night. At 8 a.m. in the morning, we'd click send on probably 250 emails a day, cold emailing as many school districts as we could find. And there was a single stovetop burner, and pasta was quick and cheap and easy. And so we'd go to either a Ralph's, a Whole Foods, or a Sprouts, and we had the wheels turning knowing we had to pivot. So we were always looking for opportunity, and we'd walk into grocery, we'd walk generally by beverage to get to pasta sauce, and beverage was bright and colorful and exciting. We'd think, maybe we should launch a beverage. And we'd get to pasta sauce, and it was the one category that was old Italian, tan label, cursive writing, visually nothing appealing. We'd have this problem where we didn't want to be associated with anything on the brand side because everything looked identical. On the flavor side, it felt like there was no meaningful value proposition, no communication of any sort of innovation. After a few grocery trips, we'd started thinking what if we do what's been done in beverage to an old, outdated, stale category and pair that with real meaningful innovation? We knew we could take these innovative on-trend flavors that had been seen in adjacent categories. Hot honey was everywhere. So we took hot honey, paired it with a brand that we thought kind of looked the way a beverage brand might. We'd met another founder who had a food scientist. We sat down with her and we said, what do we do now? Well, you need a formula and a recipe. She introduced us to her food scientist. We met this food scientist. We told her what we'd wanted. She'd worked in the category. She knows it. She can do it. And she said, how soon do you want to launch the brand? She said 3 months. And she's so nice. She didn't want to laugh, but there was a pause and she's like, well, I would just caution you that it might take at least 8 months. I said, we were pissed. We were 8 months. We need to, we need to encourage this woman to move faster. She's like, well, it's not me. I can get these turned around really quickly, but just so you know, getting to the point where you're commercially ready for sale in retail doesn't happen overnight. And a year and a half later, we learned that was the case, to the point where our families, are you actually, is this ever going to launch? Are you really doing it? Common thought in the category was that we were going to fail. Right? We were doing something that had never been done. Co-manufacturers, I think, were scared of it a little bit. And we had reached out, probably literally every co-manufacturer in the US. I probably sent 500 emails to different manufacturers. Nobody would take us.
Rejection after rejection. Nobody is taking Troy and his dreams of pasta sauce seriously. Until one day, after a late night of working on the business, Troy fails his accounting exam and gets called into his teacher's office.
Met with my professor, and he said, you get okay grades usually. What happened? And I told him, I'm launching this pasta sauce brand. I have been distracted. My fault. I'll be more disciplined. I didn't study. He was like, pasta sauce? Tell me more. I got a guy I think you should meet. He introduced me to this guy, Mike Shull. Mike is a former Whole Foods exec. And so I meet Mike at Erewhon for lunch. I see Mike walk up to Erewhon. He's wearing a Hawaiian shirt and flip-flops. I'm like, okay, I already like this guy. And he sits down with me. We talk for an hour. And at the end of the meeting, he says, what can I do to help? And I said, well, I've got one co-packer that kind of had let us on a little bit, felt like they were interested, and had disappeared. And he said, what's the name of the manufacturing facility? And I told him, and he said, 1 second. And he opened up his phone, he dialed a number. We need a plant tour tomorrow. And he knew the CEO, he knew the family ownership. And the next day we were touring the facility. We were first in line and we were ready to launch.
By a stroke of luck, Troy finds a manufacturer. The product is finally ready to launch. It's go time.
I remember we were so excited to go see product, and we walk in and there's one jar of each SKU in the top right corner of the shelf. Like, I can't even reach the thing, but it was there. Right? And we were so fired up that it was there. After putting in the work and demoing and getting people to pick product up and try it once, we were finding that consumer was coming back and trying it again and again and again. Like, we became part of their habitual consumption routine. The average Erewhon shopper buying pasta sauce thinks of Saws. That doesn't happen with product just sitting there. It's very difficult to do, and it's even more difficult to scale. Like, we were going up against billion-dollar brands. And we were turning on a per SKU basis like 4 or 5 times the velocity. Like, we were 4 or 5 times as productive per jar than they were. Last week, I was looking at the data a few days ago. One of our SKUs almost doubles anybody else. And we launched at Central Market on buy one, get one. They had forecasted that we'd move like 600 jars in, I think it was 4 days, or it was a 5-day BOGO. And we moved 4,800. It showed entirely organic demand. We're not just fighting for that, routine shopper. We're actually able to acquire a consumer digitally, drive them into store, and really grow the category. Like, the data showing that we're bringing dollars into the category that otherwise wouldn't be there. And looking back, like, all of our success thus far has been downstream of product. The one thing I'm so glad that we never cut a corner on was ensuring that we went to market with product that we felt was better than anybody else's. We've got soft touch textured labels that are really expensive, but it's like, all the time consumers comment, like, we love the way the jar feels. And I'm like, it's so weird, but it matters.
Saws has officially found product market fit and taken off like a rocket ship. Only 15 months after launching, Target and Whole Foods pick up Saws nationwide, and soon more stores come knocking. At this point, Troy is actually saying no to more stores than yes. The product is officially viral. When looking at Troy's story, here's what's crazy to me. Months before launching the company, Troy was living it up in college. He isn't a rich executive with decades of branding experience. He's just a guy who walked through the pasta sauce aisle, saw an opportunity, and executed. But before you do the same, listen to what Troy is about to say and ask yourself, does this sound like me?
We spent like a considerable amount of money building the business, right? Like, we risked everything. We really did. We didn't park money away in the market. Like, we risked everything. If you go in my texts with Winston and you look up "we're f***ed," and you go back to 2021, early 2022, it was like every other day, me texting Winston or Winston texting me. But like, being in this constant state of fight or flight as a founder, it's like what we love. It gets us up in the morning. You have to be able to handle like immense amounts of pressure and just keep going. It keeps us up at night and we lose a lot of sleep, but it also gets us excited to wake up. The definition of an entrepreneur is like, an entrepreneur is someone who can solve problems. In so many ways, like, if we hadn't ever faced those problems, we wouldn't have been successful at all. Like, something would have been terribly wrong. The most important things I've learned, and I think the most important skill I've developed, is to be unfazed by problems. Today, we had a label mishap on the manufacturing line. 20,000 labels gone. It's okay. We're gonna be just fine. You take so many punches, you just learn to absorb them, and you learn how to punch back 10 times harder. You have to genuinely want to win, but you have to be passionate and excited about the difference and change you're making in winning.